Hi everyone, I'm Anamitra, co-founder of A4 Capital and host of the Pre-Seed Show. Today we're going to talk to Loop and Anand, its co-founder and CEO. It's a really exciting company. It's in the restaurant space. Would you believe that restaurants use AI to improve order taking, order delivery, and reducing errors? I had no idea that restaurants use AI, but somehow Anand and Loop have figured it out. I'm so excited to learn how. So without further ado, let's talk to Loop. Hey Anand, welcome to the show. First off, it's really exciting that you're working on the restaurant space and you're applying AI to it. But the mind is blown the moment I think about hamburgers and AI. How does that work? How does AI even get into the picture with restaurants? Restaurant owners have a busy life as it is. How do you even think about that?
Great question, Anamitra. Restaurants are low margin businesses with a very high churn rate, right? Where does a high sort of COGS, low gross margin business like AI fit into this whole world? The best way to think about it is to look at what's happening in restaurants as two independent tectonic shifts overlapping at the same time. So one is the growth of delivery and digital ordering. So in a lot of ways, restaurants are actually going through what we think of as a fifth revolution. In terms of starting from packaged goods, frozen foods, to drive-through, to everything that happened with mobile, and then now with delivery. The impact of this revolution is that there's actually many multi-billion-dollar brands being created in a span of a few years, almost like SaaS businesses. And they're leveraging social media, digital ordering, delivery to effectively take off and grow into hundreds, if not thousands, of locations in just a span of 5 to 10 years. And fundamentally, the reason that's happening is because consumers have shifted into convenience. We don't want to really go back into the kitchen, cook or make our own food. We're not really looking at delivery as a taboo subject. It's not like this gamer or sort of lazy thing to do. It's just a sensible choice a working couple makes. And the kind of food that you're leaning in is also into salads and proteins and such. And I think there is a massive consumer shift underway. That's sort of the tailwinds that's causing restaurant landscape to change a lot. The last time this happened with drive-thrus, we basically have McDonald's and everything under the sun. Of course, drive-thrus did not become the entirety of the industry, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it basically changed the way the industry thinks about its margins and everything underneath. And the second big thing is obviously AI, but it's in the context of labor markets, right? So 75% of all of the CPAs are going to retire in the next decade. There's a few 100,000 accountants that retired in the past 2-3 years. And I think we are living in a world where it's becoming harder and harder to definitely staff front of the house labor, but even more harder to find the right talent to effectively operate in a world where there are new business models for restaurants. So there is a very huge fight for great talent, as you can imagine, even in the world of restaurants, to find the best people that can come and operate this consumer business. And Loop is sitting right at the intersection there, right? So we're leveraging the fact that the consumers' orders, transactions, feedback, the margins, everything can be digital and real time, and you can actually close the loop on that. And using that data as a representative sample to drive the restaurant into profitability and growth, and using effectively the new paradigm of AI agents to create coworkers that can actually help the restaurant optimize that revenue channel without having to add a whole team of marketing analysts, controllers, and data folks, and just using Loop as a product as an Iron Man suit for their existing team.
Right. That's well put. Let's dive into it a little bit more. When I go to a restaurant these days, I see a typical scene is like a bunch of scooters and cars double parked waiting outside. Those are the order takers. Those are the hardworking people who are delivering all the food that we are eating while watching a game or something. And as I enter the restaurant, there's some people who are sitting down. And then if you go to the restroom in the back, you run by the kitchen, and the kitchen has a bunch of screens all around them. I hadn't seen those many screens, and then So in the way it operates, it seems like there's a bunch of new things that you're describing is online ordering, delivery takes up a certain percentage, I'm sure, of all restaurant orders. And then there are people who are eating, dining in, who are ordering from a different system. And then there's the actual restaurant and the kitchen, which is sourcing all the food and the supplies and managing the labor and making sure that, if there's if something is delivered, it's all reconciled in the back end. I can see DoorDash doing a big piece of work. I can see Toast doing a big piece of work. What are the other sort of, I guess, slices or let's say the restaurant, if you were to imagine as a stack, DoorDash sits somewhere within the order side, and then Toast. Can you just walk us through like a restaurant's, if it compared that to a stack, and where does Loop fit in?
Yeah, great question. There are lots of different ways to look at the restaurant stack, and my favorite way to look at it is the people side of it, right? So if you think about the front of the house, which is the people that you typically see in the restaurant, like the waiter staff or the cashier who's basically taking your order. Toast was a revolutionary product, right? For that effective task, where you actually did not have to train somebody to, over a month to understand the product. Toast is so easy to use, and the hardware was reliable, and it basically powers 150 or 200,000 restaurants today, and it was serving that part of the restaurant. DoorDash or Uber Eats and EasyCater and the whole world of delivery and ordering effectively caters to a slightly different
Mm.
part of the restaurant team, and that's basically the delivery drivers. We actually have several brands on Loop who were doing delivery with their own custom software even before DoorDash and Uber Eats existed. And of course, they have completely shut those businesses down and have completely pivoted into DoorDash and Uber Eats. But fundamentally, the reason that happened, that shift happened, is because it's very hard to actually have your own fleet of delivery drivers. It's very hard to like manage them, staff them,
Mm-hmm.
and change that. So fundamentally, the big unlock there was obviously mobile phones with internet, and that fundamentally unlocked a massive gig economy, and
Mm-hmm.
that fundamentally made plugging in the ability to send food from the restaurant to a consumer ordering away uh, uh, you know uh, an add-on without you having to staff a ton of people that actually wait for those orders to come and deliver, which very quickly become uneconomical. So if you think of Toast as serving cashiers and waiters, and if you think of DoorDash as replacing the delivery drivers, what Loop is doing is actually empowering the back office folks, right? So the way that you can actually think of Loop as sitting in the restaurant stack is everything that happens after the order is prepared inside the kitchen, and everything that leads from that information onto like your growth drivers to bring those customers back into the restaurant. And that's basically what a back office team does, starting from understanding the cash flow all the way down to, hey, how much do we budget to spend and grow this channel. And that's effectively Loop's position inside the restaurant. And it's a unique sort of positioning. It's a different way to think about it, and it's one of our sort of challenges on the go to market side, which is to help our restaurants understand the fact that Loop is not a software stack that's adding into like a point of sale, or it's not a delivery channel. We're not getting them additional orders. Rather, we're actually equipping the back office teams to lean into these new channels and achieve profitable growth.
Where I guess the question is like maybe going back to AI again. Like what is an example of an agent or AI that Loop would use or on behalf of the restaurant that would make the restaurant business better for the owners?
Absolutely. So my favorite example here is a tool that we built out called Samantha. So she basically calls the general manager of a store who is very likely in their car driving between the two or three restaurants that they're actually managing and sort of looking after the shifts and making sure everything's on order, gives them a call to tell them that their store has an elevated error rate or seeing a ton of cancellations, or somebody had actually marked a specific item out of stock, so that they can take the necessary actions. It could be something as simple as effectively ordering more inventory, to potentially having the front of the house staff trained on effectively managing their point of sale or their ordering channel better. So the way that that actually plays in is, restaurants are overwhelmed with dashboards, right? The last thing a general manager wants, a store manager wants, is another dashboard where they have to go behind a desk and open it and read it. And even having those screens on a phone is already overwhelming. So, you know, we are in a world where the voice models are becoming so good and so real time that it's a no brainer. To effectively empower that frontline staff with a model that can actually give them insights about their store in a way that doesn't require them to actually waste more time in going and doing that. And that's a very simple example of one facet, of restaurant efficiency that AI can power.
Right. So sort of like an assistant or operating and like an operating partner who's always keeping a lookout on the data, and then having a conversation or starting a conversation to look for anomalies, so that that gets the manager's focus in certain areas, right?
Absolutely, and it's exactly what they need, which is to have those two or three sort of quick, question answers, which is, hey, this is happening. Let's say, hey, your drinks are out of stock. It's like, when did they go out of stock? In the past hour. How many orders did we do today? 20. Oh, that makes sense. We just stocked it for 20. Let me just go place an order, just turn that item off for the next couple of hours, and I should have additional stock coming soon. So that's a very simple workflow that can be handled over a phone. But currently the way that they actually operate this on dashboards, logins, screens, or even apps is just so cumbersome and unintuitive that it just doesn't make sense.
Right. And then this you described this problem for a general manager who has 2 stores or 3 stores, but some of these folks are managing so many more stores, Todd, like the ratio is much higher, tens and hundreds. And then if you and something or other is always going wrong or right in so many different locations. And imagining like AI is like in the background, like looking, reading, monitoring, and then surfacing to get to help you focus. It's sort of like a network operations center almost, and the agent's job is to keep an eye out on everything.
That's exactly right. A data analyst that never sleeps and gets you the answers instantly. And a lot of these questions are not that hard, except it comes from data sources that are disparate, right? There are 6 different dashboards that they might have to log in to correlate all of that and find the needle in the haystack, which at the end of the day is leading to a very simple insight or an answer that is now at their fingertips.
Right. So give us a sense of how big Loop is, and not everybody knows, but in terms of number of the types of restaurants you can talk about who are customers, how many there are, whatever you can share, just to give some folks where you stand as a business.
Absolutely. So today we power thousands of restaurant locations across the US. We power over 300 brands today. Several public brands, many private ones. We fundamentally look at our customer base as sort of two different segments. We power brands like Dave's Hot Chicken, or one of our favorite operators, Savory Funds portfolio, Mobetas are in our barbecue, etc. But at the same time, we also power franchisees of large brands like McDonald's and Carl's Jr. and so on and so forth, Jersey Mike's, where we basically power a 40 to 100 unit franchisee to effectively lean in and drive profitable growth for their own delivery and digital ordering.
Right. And then geographic spread for the company, like where are these restaurants located in the US?
All over the country. So they're spread, in effectively every major, metro, pretty much every suburban city, and every small town.
Right. But you started where? You started several years ago. Just as and you came out of Uber Eats. I think that's the origin. So maybe walk us back to where it all started for you. Where did this idea come from, and how did you get your entrepreneurial start?
Yeah, great question. So, listen, I'm a foodie, and I love food so much so that I actually started my own restaurant to effectively feed myself and commercialize something where I could order all the time without having to bother my grandma at like 3 in the night. And ended up having a lot of fun building the restaurant. It operates even today. It was a side project, no big ambition around like scaling it, etc. But when delivery happened, and this was around the time I was at Uber, um, it was very clear that the consumer has shifted and the restaurants are like leaning in like there is no tomorrow. There is all of this fundamental resistance for restaurants to go into technology, and delivery just effectively blew all of those away, and restaurants were leaning in, and it just became like a very obvious problem to go after. And my co-founder Sundar was one of the smartest engineers at Uber that I met, and we ended up sort of spending some time with restaurants and building conviction around the fact that this opportunity that we see with like data and what we can build around powering restaurants in this area was actually an acute pain point for the restaurant. They were actually suffering from it. There was actually a restaurant that was on the verge of shutting down, and we helped turn it around. And we had a couple of very interesting experiences there with very small restaurants. And the instant question for us was, hey, do we work with small restaurants? Or do we work with large restaurants, large restaurant groups? And there was only one way to find out. This was in May or late April, actually, of 2022, when we went to a restaurant conference, like a trade show in Vegas called the Food on Demand conference. And Sundar and I had built out these prototypes on our laptop, and we just stood at the entrance and stopped any and everybody, restaurateur, vendor, just anybody from the industry to just stop by and give us some feedback about the product that we built. And this is a hospitality industry. Everybody's super nice. We had so much feedback. We learned so much from that. I run into so many people that we met the first time, even now, and they still remember us. And we actually ended up finding our first customer there, right? And a month later, we told you about that idea, and you backed us, with our first check and with your first check, and we were in business. We basically, left our jobs at Uber. Sundar was at ShareChat, and effectively started Loop in the next couple of months.
That's an incredible story. Story of getting started. Sounds like sounds like trade shows and conferences in person. That's where it worked. A lot of people start off with just cold outbound on LinkedIn. I guess that's fine if you're selling a regular SaaS product to any kind of vertical. But how did you figure out that meeting people in person where they are, like trade shows and conferences? That's a good channel, a differentiated channel for you.
Yeah, I think part of it was basically my own limitations as an engineer, and my experience building my first startup, where all of my excitement was about the technology. And we actually did not think about customers that much. And I learned the very hard way that it's always important to work backwards from customers and not forward from the technology. And I really just wanted to talk to restaurants, right? And we figured out very quickly that the problem that we were solving for, which is effectively equipping the restaurant with a bunch of coworkers that can go and solve for digital and delivery ordering, is a problem that's actually bigger with larger enterprise chains. And we wanted to go after it, except I didn't have access to it, right? I guess it's just my specific weakness, or maybe like other founders run into this problem too, but it's very hard to get anybody on a call. Definitely a restaurant person on a call. And most of the time we were gate kept, by somebody who was there to like take the order, and it didn't make sense. My outreach on LinkedIn or emails was falling on deaf ears, honestly. And I don't think I knew how to write great copy or do great outbound, but it's also likely that that's not the channel that works for this industry. And I think that's actually what I figured out, very quickly, which is, listen, restaurants are on phones all the time. They're in person all the time. They're doing transactions with, let's say, their produce vendor or their meat vendor, their protein vendor in person. They're shaking hands. And they're doing these large transactions in person, offline. It's very hard to sort of trust this person on a call who's solving for a completely new problem, which is already overwhelming, and by this new category of software remotely. So I ended up effectively being on the road and showing up at every single trade show that I could find on a Google search. Most of them are actually in Vegas, so it wasn't like too far away. Some of them in New York, Dallas, Atlanta, Indianapolis, Chicago. Ended up flying all over, going to the trade shows, just shaking hands and talking to anybody, not just restaurant people, about the problem and how it was impacting all of them. And I think those relationships and those foundations, especially when um, you do discovery, right? You do discovery very deeply, like as in you sit down, have a drink and talk for a couple of hours about all of the ways in which they're kind of seeing the problem. Helped us really arrive at the wedge very strongly. In our case, it was financial reconciliation. It didn't matter what other products we built. We actually had to help them understand what the flow through was, what the cash flow was, and then expanding from there to other products. I think we were able to establish the foundations by virtue of showing up in person and shaking hands and having that in-depth conversations directly.
Did you have to learn golf at all?
Listen, I think it would have really helped me a lot to have learned golf. I've just been waiting to find the time, to learn it. There's actually a couple of restaurant trade shows that are built around golf resorts, and every
Right.
time I look at them and I'm like, that's not for me, but hoping to get there soon.
Right. The other thing I've seen you develop into is an amazing sales leader, from an engineering person to identifying a great idea, and then even though your emails may not have been returned over on from LinkedIn, you went out, you figured out that you wanted to pursue this idea, and you wanted to be where the restaurant owners were in their trade shows or in their restaurant themselves, and then eventually that you had product market fit. Eventually you wanted to hit a revenue target, and you had learned sales. What how did you develop into the sales leader that you are? It feels like you have such a wonderful command over all the, say, you turn sales into a science, like many founders do, is that they become really good go-to-market sales leaders themselves, even though you're not a trained CRO. How did you how did you how did you learn that? And as you look back at Anand from 2 years ago, what would you say your greatest development has been?
Yeah, you know what they say. First time founders think about product. Second time founders think about distribution. I think 3 years into building Loop, I feel that the most important thing to think about is actually the people. So for me, being on the trade show floors and running around and shaking hands with everybody and meeting as many people as I could, uh, gave me the opportunity to meet basically every seller on the trade floor, and I would effectively get into the sales math with them, right? I would get into, how are you selling? How are you finding people? And I think in a lot of ways, I was doing discovery on understanding sales process on the trade show floor. And eventually that led me to build an opinion uh, around what actually works in the industry, and what are the different value propositions like different people were setting up. What are the team compositions, right? Surprisingly, in the industry, most sales teams are really small, as in 3 to 4 people, and one seller can actually entirely change a category. So I ended up sort of chasing them and finding them, right? And and I think I wanted to meet the best seller at Olo, the best seller at Toast, and try to understand what they were doing. So I learned a lot, and I'm very grateful for all of the sellers taught me how to sort of look at different problems and different value propositions that they were presenting. And eventually, I think I made my own share of mistakes, initially with respect to thinking about a sales team, and we continue to, sort of make our own mistakes with respect to how to think about the sales team. But I think the most important um, uh, the most important sort of consideration is when you when you find um, when you find yourself asking the question like, when do I need to hire the salesperson? That's probably like not the right time already, right? Like it's you're probably too early, right? So the right time to like actually think about when you want to sell, and really good sellers actually look for this, which is they want the founder to close the first 100 or 200K. uh, I think there are very few sellers who can do that. I don't think I haven't met anybody who can actually do that first 100, 200K. That's just the founder doing their job. And maybe even $1 million. There's lots of people that go up to $10 million. So it's very important to go figure out that 0 to 1 like product market fit and actually hire a salesperson to solve for a very specific problem, right? So maybe it's top of the funnel, right? Maybe you just want a couple of SDRs, BDRs who can go, call or email and get prospects for you to fill your calendar, right? Maybe your calendar is already filled and you're actually dropping the ball, right? Where you're actually not able to process it. Maybe what you need to do is hire an AE. But when you do that, hire two, just so that, there is competition. Sellers love competition and they want to come on top. And it's also helpful to build playbooks and not build around the person. Um, but effectively you want to solve for a specific problem in the sales funnel, especially with your initial the initial people that you sell for, that you hire for. And the specific kind of problem is also going to inform you on who to look for, right? What is a persona to look for? And I'll probably end just with this, which is one of the mistakes that I made is I tried to look for sellers who are good at product. I don't think uh, sellers need to be good at product. Sellers need to be good at the sale, at distribution, at effectively understanding the pain, and speaking to the buyer, right? And not necessarily like selling the product. That's not their job. And I think it's okay to basically make a ton of mistakes along the way in terms of sales motions, etc. But it's important to like take more shots on target and move really fast.
Makes sense. That's a wonderful set of advice for folks who are just thinking about go to market and sales. I wanna end on something about the future. And now Loop has been through 3 years. There's a wonderful set of events. Hopefully, 2026 will be amazing. And from a business perspective, 2025 was crazy growth, and 2026 will keep up, thankfully. And then, but if you look out of several years out, what's a moonshot that you'd be proud of at Loop? What are some crazy ideas you guys have?
Anamitra, I think this is the decade of brand building for um, anybody like me who's a foodie, who loves selection. Um, I think this decade is going to be very rewarding because the consumers have voted with their apps and with their orders, and they're creating that demand. Brands are the savvy ones are recognizing that demand and they're building menus that cater to customers. We're going to have a ton of food entrepreneurs that come in and start brands and that go from 0 or 1 to 100 or 1,000 locations really fast. And Loop wants to be their agentic coworker, their team that's actually powering that growth profitably. We want to turn around the reputation of the industry, that it's a place where it's very hard to build a business or it's very low margin. There's no reason why economies of scale around producing food need to be like unprofitable or low margin. Neither is this business so hard that so many restaurants have to fail, especially beyond the 2 to 3 locations. And I think our aspiration is to effectively become their marketing analyst, their financial controller, the data analyst that doesn't sleep, that's looking after their business, helping them make the right decisions so that they can go focus on the thing that they love, which is making great food, and enjoying the customer delight that they generate.
That's right. So a restaurant co-pilot. like someone that allows the restaurant owner to just focus on the craft of the food itself and satisfying the customers and having engaged employees, as opposed to all the sort of nuts and bolts of things that make all of that possible. That's an amazing vision, not just for Loop but for the industry overall, right? I guess final question: what's your favorite restaurant in San Francisco?
Oh, that's a super tough one. I'll probably just shout out a bunch of our customers here. Um, Starboard, Lazy Dog, Kitawa, who just got on board with us. Lazy Dog is another favorite. There's a ton of Dave's Hot Chickens around. I think all of these are some of my favorites, but they're also our customers. Aspirationally, but we got there. But I love all of them.
Man, this is almost dinner time. I'm getting so hungry after this interview. I want to hit up all of those places that you just mentioned. So, Anand, it's been a thrill being part of the journey so far. I'm really excited about what the big announcements that are coming up and throughout the course of 2026, all the achievements you'll have. Thank you again for taking the time to share your story with all the pre-seed founders out there.
Thanks for believing in us and being the first check Anamitra. And for any founder that's listening, Anamitra is one of the best you can find, and he's been amazing to us all along the way. So if you're like me, you should probably just send them an email, just like I did, and they'll actually call you back, and you might be on your own founding journey. So thanks, Anamitra, again for backing us.
Thank you, sir. Check us in the mail. Appreciate that. Thank you all for joining. Signing off from the Pre-Seed Show today.